If it was so bad, why didn't you leave sooner? The blurb on the back cover of my soon to be released book starts with this question. Because this is a question I asked myself several times after walking away from a marriage that was turning toxic. And this is a question a lot of my clients get asked when they want to end a relationship.
Things like it's not that bad. Even in corporate situations, every job has its problems. I'll leave when things calm down or when I have more time, or at least it's a stable job, right?
Is leaving only justified when things are really bad? Why do we prolong leaving a situation even when we are not happy? Do good people stay in bad situations longer? Why does anyone continue to stay in a situation that doesn't serve them? These are the questions we are going to explore in today's episode of the Grown Up Girls podcast.
Prachi, and the more people I talk to nowadays, the more I realize that people have come to somehow believe that this is how it is meant to be, which is a lie that we're feeding ourselves. We've been sold this lie for way too long. We are somewhere succumbing to, the victim mentality that we have adopted over time, or our lives are on autopilot. So we are going to do this episode in two parts. In today's episode, I will be talking about how we tend to stay in a toxic environment at work. Why do we choose that? Since I've had a fair share of the corporate world experience and I coach numerous people on getting more clarity in their work lives and create the sense of balance. In the next episode, Prachi, who is an expert on relationships, is going to talk about why do people stay in toxic relationships. So make sure that you press the bell icon today so that you do not miss on a very, very important second part of the episode too. So Prachi, recently a person approached me for a mindfulness coaching, and he's 38 years old and he's working in one of the top telecom companies. He's a senior manager. So on paper, he has everything going for him: a great salary, stability, and a respectable job title. But when he came to me, he was extremely unfulfilled and very exhausted. And he kept asking himself, like, is this really it? And he hated the endless meetings. He hated that the fact that he felt undervalued by his leadership and he had no time, absolutely none, for his personal life. And despite all of that, he kept telling himself, oh, I should be grateful for this job. If I leave now, all these years of efforts are going to get wasted. And what if I don't find anything better? And the biggest realization sort of came to him when we started the coaching. And the biggest work really was to understand that his identity as a person was not linked to the job that he was doing. And so I've been working with him for a couple of months now. And today he's starting to learn how to create effective boundaries, reignite his hobbies. And with the growing confidence, I think he's actually enjoying his work a little more than he was earlier. He's more confident and also he's looking at other opportunities from a sense of knowing himself better. So I think that's really the premise of what we're going to be talking about today.
That sounds really interesting, and I'm glad this person is able to develop better self awareness, staying in the same profile, and he doesn't feel like he has to escape from this profile to find something better. And in fact, I'm super curious to pick your brains about this also. Our professional lives seem like the realm of logic and rationality, right? So one would assume that decision making should be very clear and obvious here. One plus one must equal two. I should know my next step. I should know when it's good, when it's bad. Like it should be just clear. And yet I see so many people struggling in dissatisfying work conditions or cribbing about their jobs. I wanted to understand from you, and I was really wondering that is it really that bad out there, or is there something deeper involved in this whole employee-employer dynamic? Like, what do you think?
So I agree to the part that you said that, on the surface level, it should be a decision made in logic. And absolutely on surface level, if you think about it like that, decision should be logical. If a job is unfulfilling, toxic, you leave and you get another job. But human behavior, like we all know, isn't purely rational. And even it's the human going to work. It's not like, you suddenly become, just leave your emotions and what you feel or your mind or, the way you are out of it. So it's deeply
True.
influenced by psychology and our emotions and even our subconscious conditioning. So here is what I think really is at play. So,
Mm-hmm.
our natural tendency for loss aversion and the fear of the unknown, I think is the biggest cause of this, because our brains are wired in a way to avoid loss more than seek gain, and hence the fear of stepping into uncertainty, even if the situation is really, really bad, often outweighs the potential benefits of leaving.
True. True.
Right. Then there is the sunk cost fallacy. That's supremely interesting. I spoke about it when I was talking about the person who's working with me also. The more time and energy and effort someone has invested in the job, the harder it becomes to walk away. So people
Mm.
tell themselves, oh, I've already spent 5 years here. Now I can't let it all go waste. I need to reap my, benefits. I need to reap the returns of this. And if someone has invested years in their career and yet they no longer align to it for whatever reason, job change, culture change, etc., admitting it in itself can be extremely, extremely painful. So they rationalize saying, maybe it's not that bad. Maybe it's just that I've been doing this for a while, so I'm feeling this, not too much. And, all jobs have problems. So we try to justify it to ourselves like that. Then there is also the social and cultural conditioning. Many
Mhm.
people are conditioned to believe that a stable job, even if it's miserable, is better than taking a risk or not having a job altogether. So
True.
the societal expectations and the family pressure that you have to constantly be in a stable job, bring a steady income plays a huge role here, which is also a lot of people face this while they are looking to shift from being an employee to an entrepreneur, for example, taking that plunge. Then there's also the identity and self worth, which again I touched upon when I was talking about the person I'm working with, because the job isn't a paycheck for many of us, it's a core of our identity.
Yeah.
And when we walk away from it, it feels like we're losing a part of ourselves. And we're never ready to be doing that. And also, there is the manipulation at workplace and the dynamics. And I work
Mm.
with a lot of organization in understanding the subtle dynamics which might be there. So,
Mhm.
some organization very subtly or very overtly instill guilt, a sense
Mm.
of obligation, or a sense of being indispensable. That
Right.
makes the employees feel that you must stay despite the fact that you're unhappy because, we're giving you so much. Or how are we going to do without you? Or how are you going to do without us? So that
Mm.
false sense of, pressure which is there. And also, I think lastly that I want to talk about is also the lack of clarity, which really the onus falls on us because
True.
people often stay stuck because they're not clear. They don't have an exit strategy. So the fear of what next and not having the clarity around it kind of keeps us stuck to the familiar, even if it's draining. So answering your question, it's not just bad out there, it's deeper than that. Really
Hmm.
is.
Yeah, it
Because,
sounds.
yeah, sorry, you're saying something.
So I'm going to come back to that whole organizational manipulation thing in a bit. But
Hmm.
as you were talking, I was just kind of making the connection that probably the factors are very, very similar to why people stay in bad relationships also, which I will touch upon deeper like in the next episode. But like you said, you talked about the sunken cost, and this happens in relationships also. People feel like, oh God, like I've spent so many years with this person, and now like starting all over from like dating somebody to finding somebody that just feels like too much work. I would rather put in work here,
Yeah.
uh, even if it's not working as of now, then like starting somewhere new, that part. And then, and when you were talking about the social conditioning bit, that to bring the paycheck home and to be the provider, I guess, and tell me if that's true, is that like more of a pressure for men?
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah,
yeah.
absolutely. Because women somehow have that fallback. That's what is believed.
Mm.
That they can do it. For a man, it's societal. The way we've been kind of brought up, our conditioning is that the man is the bread earner, and a lot of the primarily their identity is linked to what they do and the kind of money that they bring
Yeah,
in.
I
So
think
of
even if
course,
it may not be like translating that into reality, but I think psychologically with like the
it's
generational conditioning
yeah, yeah,
must be really connected to their sense of identity or sense of usefulness, let's say,
yeah,
you know,
yeah.
house.
Yeah, exactly. Because they usually, and especially men who have this kind of conditioning, would also, see that the role of the woman in the house is different. Is more involved in the house, and they are more involved in earning the money that they're earning. So yes, of course, it's more for men, and that's again something that really does need to change. So yeah, so
Yeah.
like we were talking, I think it's layered with psychological, social, and emotional complexities, and that's what makes the decision so tough.
I can see that, and it's interesting how like both aspects are overlapping, which again goes to probably say that we think that our lives are compartmentalized, but they're really not. Like everything plays into everything. That's why when someone talks about the work-life balance aspect, I somehow am never able to understand that because I think it's not like work and life. Work is a part of life. Work is something that allows us to live a life in a certain way, right? Work is what brings home the money, or like, and money buys you freedom.
Hmm.
Money buys you the opportunity to live the life. So it cannot be like work-life balance. It has to be integrated because, like we are talking, everything just like plays into each other.
Yeah, it's a holistic living. I mean, that's what I always tell people, and you and I have had this conversation several
Yeah.
times, that it's not, you cannot compartmentalize yourself. You're a human, the same person who is at home, the same person with the same mind and heart and emotions going to work as well.
Absolutely. So I want to just come back to something very interesting that you said about the organizational aspects of how it plays into someone's psyche and how they perceive staying in an organization. So, do organizational variables play a role in keeping a dissatisfied employee also hooked? And I sometimes wonder if a large number of people don't even realize that they are unhappy when they're working in an organization, like you were talking about lack of clarity. So, just can you like say more about that?
Yep. So I love this because the organization that I work with on this particular thing. So organizational do play a huge role, the variables in why dissatisfied employees often stay without even realizing that they're unhappy. And because many companies do create an environment that keeps employees just about comfortable to stay. Just about. Even if they are not thriving, they're comfortable. And some
Right.
of them are, like what I call as golden handcuffs. I mean, it's a term which is widely used. High salaries, stock options, or benefits like health insurance can make it very, very financially painful to actually leave, even if the job is miserable, because these are huge costs when it comes otherwise. Also, unclear career alternatives, right? Some organizations don't provide a clear pathway at all for growth.
Like,
Exactly. So you don't have a path chalked out. What next? But they
mm-hmm.
also don't make it easy for you to leave because you've never put your mind into what's your growth path, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
employees stay stuck in that cycle thinking that, oh, maybe next year things are going to be better. Maybe next year I'll have more clarity. Also, workplace culture of overcommitment.
Mhm.
If a company glorifies overworking, glorifies loyalty, everyone in our organization has spent 25 years in the organization, you might start feeling guilty about leaving, that
Yeah.
everyone stayed for very long. And then they somewhat have that message internalized that real team players never quit. You stay and you sail through it and all of those things, right? I mean, even if it's tough, it's so glorified that the thought of even leaving kind of makes you feel guilty.
It kind of sounds like a very insidious way of connecting.
Yeah. Yeah, and also, because sometimes it's not even done very strategically, that, that's how it is, that this is why we are doing it. But we do
Mhm.
tend to glorify, never understanding that everyone is different, right?
Yeah.
It's again a very non-inclusive culture that you're creating, that only if you can stick and this is your style of working, do you belong. And otherwise, you're just someone who's not strong enough. That doesn't mean that's not true at all. It's not sometimes not even done consciously. And that's why a lot of organizations that I work with try to identify these subtle things that are there in the culture so that it doesn't become a part of the culture for very long time and creates the toxic environment. Then there is also the manipulative fear based leadership. Some managers create a sense of dependency. They'll tell the employees that, where are you going to get a job like this?
Mhm.
Kaise aisi stable job aur kahan milegi? tough out there. You know what happens in other organizations? It's kind of fed into those employees over and over again. And then they just start doubting themselves, creating the self doubt, which I think happens in relationships as well. That's also another thing. And then there's also the subtle, and this is so crazy. This is the subtle numbing routine, repetitive task, constant meetings, long hours. So they'll not leave any time for you to reflect. And when you can't reflect, you can never find. So you will never have the answer to the question that, am I actually happy here? Am I actually satisfied? And then there is the intermittent rewards that organizations give. Occasional promotions, a praise, a bonus, just enough, just enough to keep you alive without giving you much clarity. So yes, there are a large number of people who don't even realize they're unhappy because they're so caught up in these things, because the system is kind of designed in a way to keep them engaged enough so that they don't get into deep reflection mode.
This intermittent reward thing reminds me of when we started studying psychology. There's a concept called operant conditioning, where you train a pigeon or like a mouse to do something in return for a reward, right? Like press a lever or something like that. And usme then you have there are schedules mentioned, that what kind of schedule to use for creating this conditioning for stronger pairing with the action and all of that. So usme the funda is that, if you have a variable interval schedule, in the sense when the person doesn't know when they are going to get a reward, when it's not fixed, the duration for which the pairing happens is actually longer, because they are hooked on longer, because it's unpredictable. So kabhi bhi aa sakta hai.
Yeah.
Right. So
And so
that's
you're always in that, oh, I'm going to get it. Maybe I should do something more. Maybe I should try something harder.
Yeah, that's interesting. It just reminded me of that. And I think even in relationships, like the relationships which are very on again, off again kind of patterns, I think the same principle plays there also, because you don't know when is the next makeup coming in.
Happening. Yeah, exactly. And then that's so grand and that's so beautiful and that's so romantic that, you kind of look forward to that, and this kind of situation actually diffuses in your head, at least.
True. And I think this also makes me think, and I mean, I see this also in a lot of times, that certain kind of people are obviously more susceptible. Like you were just saying a while ago, that everybody is different in an organization. And some people might not gel with like the culture that is already prevailing, and they might find it challenging. Although, like, there is a separate part of my mind which kind of also wonders if this is so then what should be done? Like, what takes precedence? The company culture takes precedence, or an individual takes precedence, because the organization is always going to be bigger. But I guess that's a discussion for another time. But that still does not deny the fact that there are different people, and I guess some people might be more susceptible to certain response patterns. I mean, I know that personality is a very important variable that we consider as therapists when we are helping someone navigate a toxic or an abusive relationship. But in your observation, does personality play a role as a deciding factor to stay or leave in work settings also?
Massive role, I think, massive role. It really defines who stays in a toxic environment and who doesn't, just like you said, in toxic relationships, because the personality trait, it really influences how people perceive their work environment, how they respond to dissatisfaction, and how do they make a decision regarding their career. So we'll take a few of them. Let's explore. They're the people pleasers. Then these are the employees who are they will agree to everything to avoid conflict, and they prioritize harmony. So they will tolerate poor treatment, they will tolerate excessive workload, they will tolerate lack of recognition, because they simply don't want to kind of rock the boat or disappoint their team or their manager. Then there are the risk-averse personalities, those who are anxious or cautious, overcautious, and they fear uncertainty so much that it makes it very, very hard for them to kind of leave a job. even if they are deeply unhappy. And the idea is basically for them, it's like, what if the next job is even worse? Right? So, because it's the fear of the unknown. Then there are the loyalists, people who have this inherent sense of commitment, which we often see in relationships as well, right? I mean, they just believe that it's the nicest thing to do. And some employees feel like a deep sense of duty and responsibility towards their organization or their leader. And even if the company isn't treating them well, they'll stay because of the sense of obligation that I should see this project through, or because they will equate my leaving to failure.
And also, they might be placing a very high sense of value on
Yeah.
their work or their commitment, I
Yeah,
guess.
yeah, exactly. Okay, nothing will move without me. So how can I leave it? Kind of
Mm.
thing. Then there are the optimists and the rationalizers. These are the
Mm-hmm.
most amazing ones because they will naturally are super positive outlook towards everything and they will downplay every problem. They'll keep convincing themselves, oh, it's not that bad. Every job has issues. And this in itself, because they're not acknowledging that there is a dissatisfaction, will make them overlook every red flag
Mm.
and just continue because they keep believing, no, 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 but that is very good about this. This part might not be great, but that is very good. So they're always like that. Then
Yeah.
there are the thrill seekers and the growth oriented guys. Okay. These are the ones who, on the flip side, who thrive on challenge and who thrive on change and are most likely to leave if they feel stagnant. They kind of get restless because they're not growing or they're dissatisfied and then they move forward from there. So the trigger in this case for them leads to action rather than just staying stagnant in that particular place. So,
So then, would
just
type like the thrill seekers, would they also, I mean, is there a chance that they might also stay longer because whatever problems are coming up
hmm,
that are causing dissatisfaction, they might actually interpret it as a challenge
hmm,
to keep fixing.
yeah.
Rather.
So I think for them, like being stagnant is like the biggest challenge that they
Mm.
probably feel. And then see if any of these are, if you navigate through any of these mindfully and you are
Mm.
aware this is the pattern that you have, you can actually channelize it towards something constructive.
Mm.
Thrill seekers and growth oriented guys might also feel that, oh my God, a new role is going to give me a better challenge. So jump onto that. Or it's going to give me more growth. Maybe it's salary growth, or it's just the, designation growth or the role growth. So they're always kind of seeking the next, so as to say. Again, not done mindfully would mean that you might jump as the first sign of, oh, it's just boring for the last 1 week. I might start looking for another job kind of thing. So yeah, so just like in relationships, your attachment patterns will show up in your careers also. The people with anxious attachment style will cling on to a job out of fear of rejection in a new one, while the avoidant types will want to quit at the first sign of discomfort, saying that, "Oh, this is not for me. I'm just getting out of this." So at the end of the day, I think it's not just what happens at work. I think it's also about how we process and respond to it.
Yeah, what's happening inside of you? So
Yeah,
attachment, coping styles.
absolutely. And the
Yes.
personality, like you asked, and great question, does play a very important role in how we shape up our careers. So yeah,
Makes sense. Makes sense. I do think that it shows up in a lot of ways that I mean, and even like conflict management styles, right? That's a part of the personality only.
yeah,
So what you were saying about like there are some people who would always want to maintain harmony. Uh, Harmonizing is a conflict management style, right? And in harmonizing, you most often than not you will like underplay your needs just to maintain peace.
yeah,
But actually, it's not harmony. It's basically not rocking the boat.
exactly.
You know,
Yeah, and
so
that doesn't help anyone. And most of all, it doesn't help you because your manager or your people around have no clue that you're dissatisfied. So what are
mm,
they really going to resolve for you?
exactly.
Right. So
Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah. So I think, yeah, attachment styles and coping styles and conflict management styles, all aspects of personality that definitely are playing a huge role in how you are showing up at work or how you are navigating that space.
yeah,
Uh, so we've been talking about like employees in the episode so far. And when I was like preparing for this episode, this really like was playing on my mind, and I was like wondering, should we talk about this? But I think we should. I want to address something that I feel and I have encountered as an employer, right? Um, so I'm also an entrepreneur, and I've managed teams, managed employees. I also work like in therapy with a lot of founders and entrepreneurs as a therapist and coach. I've learned over time through personal and professional experience that you may do a lot for the team, but even then, sometimes people will find something to attack you about or end up unhappy. Often they won't even open up about it,
Yeah.
even if you give them the opportunity to talk about their grievances. It has happened before in my personal experience also, like the floor would always be open, but they wouldn't talk about it if it's something is bothering them. It's only after they leave that, through this source and that source, you get to know, okay, acha, this is something they didn't like. And then you like kind of you're left wondering, but then why didn't you tell me about it? Even if like there was this very good rapport, and I mean mine is a small team, so then there's a direct one-on-one rapport. It's not like you have to go through channels. So I'm just wondering, what is that about? Like, does that also contribute to a mutual dissatisfaction for both parties? Because a lot of times, even if you look at social media, a place like LinkedIn, right? You will often get to hear a lot of employee side stories. And if an employer side story comes through, there is a lot of backlash
Like,
because it's like, I think there is some kind of a perception that an employer is always privileged,
yeah.
so there is that backlash all the time ki, but you don't have a right to say this, or if you say this you are defending your stance or something like that. But the struggle for us is also real. It's hard because we do well, I'm sure like there are all kinds of people, just like there are all kinds of people everywhere, so even in employers, I'm sure there are bad employers, but there are good people also who are genuinely trying to do good work. And then if something like this happens, it is a heartbreak of sorts. Like I've had people I've worked with whose like entire teams have just upped and quit. And yes, if you look at it from their perspective, they were unhappy. But the employer never even got to know about it. Like it just blindsidedly, like it just happened for them. So what do you think about this dynamic? What do you have to say about this? What is your experience or observation on this?
It's such an important part, thing to bring in because there are not many people who talk about it. Am an entrepreneur by myself and I've had teams that I've worked with. So yes, just like employees feel stuck in dissatisfying jobs, employers and entrepreneurs can also feel very, very trapped in the cycle of doing
Yeah.
everything that they can, only to feel and face resentment or disengagement or even hostility at times from their teams.
Yeah.
So I think psychologically, what's really happening is the one of the things is projection and unmet expectations.
Mhm.
Employees sometimes project their personal frustrations onto the leadership as well. If we are feeling
Hmm.
stuck, we are feeling undervalued, or we are feeling unfulfilled, whether it's due to job or whether it's even our personal factors, you know,
Hmm.
they may unconsciously start blaming their employer and rather than addressing the root cause. So that's a major, major reason. And so
Yeah.
it's very important to really take a step back and understand where is this coming from. And for that, you need to have a solution oriented mindset. You can't have a victim mindset because it's so easy to fall into that. And that's a whole
Yeah.
big
Yeah.
conversation in itself. Also, there's a fear of confrontation and authority dynamics. Even in the
Hmm.
most open workplaces, uh,
Hmm.
employees can just be hesitant to speak up.
Hmm.
They may fear retaliation, or they may believe that the concerns are not taken seriously, or simply they might feel uncomfortable in expressing dissatisfaction. So instead, what they do is they just kind of bottle it all up, and then it turns into passive resentment, which
Hmm.
starts showing up.
Hmm.
Yes. Also, the interesting thing now that's a lot in conversation is the you owe me mindset, which is often said that the Gen Zs have that. Gen Zs don't go. I'm not saying any of that, but that's what it's often heard. Okay. I do believe everyone is different. We cannot kind of generalize anything, but it's often said that. And so a lot of employees kind of equate dissatisfaction with how much is my employer giving me, whether it's benefits, whether it's promotions, or a certain kind of workplace culture. So if their expectations are not met, no matter how much an employer is doing, it can lead to dissatisfaction very, very quickly because they're coming from the place of believing that, oh my God, I should be having this. And there is no other way, that this is it. Also, the social contagion. Now, this is a gossip that we often talk about because negativity spreads, right? Even if one person is unhappy and they are not addressing it openly, it can
Hmm.
create this huge undercurrent of discontent among the team.
Yeah, that's
Because yeah, because employees might vent to each other, and rather than bringing up the concern with the leadership, you're
yeah,
just reinforcing the dissatisfaction without having any resolution to it.
true.
Yeah, so that's just kind of spreads through between. Also, if you have a mismatch of your communication styles, and I think
Hmm.
you will relate to this, employee, because I've had this conversation with you once. I think employers and employees often have, operate only from different perspectives.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
entrepreneurs are very future focused, very growth driven, and they're constantly solving problems. And employees, on the other hand, will be more focused on stability, routine,
Hmm.
structure, personal fulfillment. And if the communication isn't aligned, right, then it's going to be frustrating for both parties. And
Yeah,
that
that's
leads to mutual dissatisfaction.
hmm.
You
So
know,
what
so
I'm
you,
saying is that
sorry.
it's possible that I mean, and yes, it does happen. As you're speaking it, I'm just like able to connect that where the employee is in their life state and where the employer is in their life state. Obviously, they are at different uh, places in the ladder, let's say.
Yeah,
They have different goals. And if the employer is not able to respect the goal of the employee or even understand it for that matter and say, okay, I may not understand it, or I may think that, okay, this person can do better like this. But if it doesn't fall into the goal set of that person, they won't get it. And they won't see value in it also. And if
yeah,
I'm pushing for that as an employer, I'm pushing for that, then I guess, maybe, creating more dissatisfaction.
exactly. So I think yeah, and I think what we really do is to have that communication, and I think the respect for each other's point of views, and we don't, like we said, empathy versus compassion, that we've spoken about it at some point of time. We have to kind of understand where is the other person coming from, and yet value that, maybe we'll never be able to think in that way, uh, but can we find a path that works for both? And employers can feel unappreciated, they can feel emotionally drained, while the employee on the other hand will feel unheard and disconnected, and that creates a toxic loop because both sides
Yeah.
assume the worst about each other. And instead of
Mm,
addressing the root issue, they're just beating around the bush.
true.
Right. So I have a question for you on
Hmm.
this one. How
Okay.
do you encourage a culture of constructive feedback and expectations, in the way you manage your
Hmm.
people, in the way you run your organization? Give me one or two things that have really worked for you. Because I know you do a good job. I see so much of love in your team for you. There's no better person that I know that I should be asking this question to.
Thank you so much. That is very reinforcing because that has not always, been my experience, but I try. I think for me, honestly, like the biggest learning as an entrepreneur has been that I'm not going to make everyone happy. Like that's just not going to happen. There will be times where I'll have to make tough calls where and it'll change, from occasion to occasion, where sometimes I'll have to prioritize the organization's goals, and sometimes I'll have to prioritize, my team's requirements or goals. So, what works, I think for me, like you said, communication, absolutely. Like even when I'm hiring people, when I'm interviewing people, and in the final round, when we are telling the candidate that yes, we are welcoming you on board, my only and only condition is communication. Like I just tell them that no matter what is happening, no matter what is on your mind, do not assume things. Just come and talk to me about it. And both me and my co-founder, we like everybody has direct access to us. Just pick up the phone and call us, text us, whatever works for you. But talk to us. And like touchwood, for like the team that I have right now, is like I think every person has absorbed that message, and there have been times where we've been able to just resolve something before it blew up, because something happened, somebody felt something, they just came and spoke to us about it, and like it was cleared right there. So communication in all forms also, like we try to ensure that all modes of communication are open, accessible, and yeah, that, and we've had to learn that as the generations are moving forward, the priorities are changing. So when our generation was working and growing up, I think our way of looking at life and work was very different. I'm not saying good or bad because, well, you can't really judge that, because when we had people above us, we used to think that this is weird, like, and so I'm sure, like, you know,
It's a
the next
cycle.
that. So good or bad, I don't know. It's just different. So, and we've learned to like become more tolerant of it, instead of judging it and just saying, okay, fine, like this is the target and this is what we have to do. This is the goal that we have to meet, and how do we meet this in a way that works with your priorities as well as ours. So if, let's say, there is a client that I want to push for, I want some of my therapists to say, okay, I really want you to work with this person because I think you can. I think you have that potential. And I feel like they are holding themselves back because they're not confident, or they feel like, or they have like a personal hurdle to that. So I will push, but I will push with respect. I will say that because I believe in you, I would like you to do this. And therefore, and I will support you. I'll give you this resource to help you deal with this. And that's the second thing that we try and do. We create a very resourceful environment for our team.
Empowering.
Empowering and resourceful in the sense that we'll give you everything that you need as a backup.
Hmm.
So
So
between my co-founder, we have divided roles. So like if I am looking after the therapeutic aspects, everything to do with the therapeutic aspects, including my therapist's mental health, or including my my team's personal personality traits, or those aspects,
hmm.
that plus anything to do with the client work, like whatever therapeutic angles are coming up in the client work, that's all my area. And my co-founder handles everything to do with admin. So let's say a client has misbehaved with the therapist. It does happen at times. Then we are standing there as a wall. Like before it reaches you, it will reach us. Or you don't get into the whole rigmarole of scheduling and doing haggling. And like sometimes people will want to bargain for a fee, all of that. So we handle that before it goes to the therapist, because you need to be doing what you are good at. So we've hired you to be a therapist. We've not hired you to be a front office person.
Yeah.
So the front office handles that, and the client comes to you after all of that little, niggles have been taken care of, which frees up a lot of mind space for them to, do what they are supposed to be doing. I think
Exactly.
these two are the main things that we try and focus on. And yes, like we try and like have a very we have a weekly meeting system where we get together for half an hour, 45 minutes, sometimes longer. And we just do a very quick recap of the week for everybody, including any personal challenges or any personal wins for that matter. So, if somebody's daughter won a medal at a school game, then,
All right.
that's spoken about. Or if, somebody went and had a parent had a surgery or something, that's spoken about. So like the format of the meeting is only such that you speak about your personal aspects as well as, how it happened in the work, which I think keeps the team connected as well. So
Oh,
yeah, these
lovely.
are,
I think
yeah.
very interesting because it just highlights that it can never just be about work. It shouldn't be. Um, there's so much more to developing that relationship, that culture, and doesn't matter if you have thousands of employees or if you have 10. The intention has to connect has to be like that. You cannot look at people in isolation. So I'm glad I asked you that question
In
and
fact,
got
in
them.
fact, that has been a very conscious decision on my part to keep a small team so that I have enough time and mental resources to, be there with everyone.
Yeah.
Because if I have like 50 people, 100 people working under me, I know that that aspect is going to take a back seat. because I know my limitation. Everybody, like as a human, has a limitation. Or I start employing, people on different rungs of the ladder, which then it becomes like a proper corporate like organization. I mean, we are not there yet. I don't know what the future holds, but for now, it's a very conscious decision to have a close knit team.
Yep. And that makes sense. It passes on like that,
Hmm.
100%. So, yeah, I'm glad. I see the change. I see the difference. I see what people, your team is talking about when it comes to the culture and you and your co-founder. I'm glad. Super happy to
I
hear
hope
this.
so. It's a constant learning journey. I mean, I'm sure you would also relate to that. That
Yeah.
probably being an entrepreneur is the
Mm.
most exciting profile you can ever have, because it's not just what you are building. It's like a constant learning experience into your own traits, your own triggers, your own conflict resolution skills. It's wow.
Yeah.
It's it's a full.
It's like an ongoing learning
Yeah,
without never having the degree.
totally. Yeah, I know, right? So, well, on that note, as a mindfulness and a mindset coach, how do you suggest that people can, bridge this gap between the job they have and the job they want, without always looking for another job? Because obviously that's never easy, right?
Yeah.
So I would love for you to talk to people about how can you create greater satisfaction where you already are. If you can move, great. But if you can't, because a lot of times you won't be able to, then how do you go about that?
Great question. And because the reality really is that jumping from one job to another isn't always the best or even the most practical solution.
And a related question to that also would be that how do you know that I need to try harder here, or I'm just like stuck in a loop? Like how we say in a relationship, right? Like जैसे
Hmm.
बोला जाता है ना, adjust कर लो, adjust कर लो, adjust कर लो. And एक तरफ हम ये भी बोलते हैं कि have we become too quick to jump relationships because we think that there are a lot of options out there.
Yeah.
So there also we kind of try and define like a fine line, na, ki
Hmm.
where is it that you need to work, put in more work, effort, or are you just like making an impulsive decision and hopping because at the first sign of dissatisfaction? So like where is the balance there?
Yeah. So I think instead of constantly seeking to fix the external, the key is to bridge the gap internally
Mm-hmm.
by shifting your mindset,
Mm-hmm.
building resilience, and actively shaping your own work experience into something which is more fulfilling. So, the one way of doing that is to shift from a job mindset to a purpose mindset. And there was a beautiful study which was done in Yale Center of Emotional Intelligence that found that people who see their work as meaningful, even in
Mm-hmm.
challenging environments, report higher satisfaction of job and lower stress also. So one thing that I always ask people is that ask yourself, what is the aspects of my current role that align with my long-term purpose, which means that you will have to have an idea of about what your purpose is. So that's where, that's important for everything, whether it's a relationship, whether it's your life, whether it's your work. And how can the next question then to that is that how can I bring in more of what I love into my day? Right? It just doesn't need to be work in itself. But if you say that, oh, I want to bring in a little more of time for my family in my day, make that change. Start working towards it. And then small tweaks like things like mentoring a junior colleague or leading a project that you've always eyed and actually, pushing for leading that or even incorporating creativity can add a whole lot of meaning to your work. The sense of giving back, the sense of creating something is very, very satisfying for any human. We're built like that. Again, another thing that we can really do is to redefine control. So
Okay.
what can I change?
Mm-hmm.
So, the perceived control over one's environment can actually really reduce stress because we always think that everybody else controls our life. So if you
Yeah.
can't change your boss because you can't, or your workload, you know, ask yourself what is within my control.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe the way I respond,
Mm-hmm.
maybe my boundaries, or maybe my mindset. And that's when mindfulness really comes in the play because mindfulness at work looks like deep breathing at times before impulsively reacting, or setting your intention. That's something that I've been doing for, I don't know, several years now. I don't start my day without setting an intention for the day. Before I see emails, check anything. What am I stepping into the day with? How am I choosing to shape my day before the world starts to take over? Taking
Mm.
mindful breaks, another important aspect. And all of these can really help reduce the sense of helplessness, which is what a lot of people feel.
Yeah. True. Yeah.
Yeah,
Subjugation, helplessness, all of that.
exactly. And then use job crafting techniques. So there was a research which was done in Yale on job crafting, and that talk about that when employees proactively adjust their roles, like by changing certain tasks or their relationships with their peers or their boss that they've not been communicating, they consciously make an attempt to communicate and voice out or their perspective towards things, they experience more engagement, they experience more fulfillment. Like
Okay.
one of the small things can be, can I recognize what are the things in the day that energize me at my work and what are the
Mm.
things that drain me? And can
Mm.
I choose to do more of the things that energize me and delegate or minimize the tasks that drain me? This is crafting your job
Or
experience.
maybe like decide when to do what in the day,
Yeah,
depending on energy levels also.
exactly. So, then you're crafting your job. Yes, there is a
Yeah.
job that you have, but you're actually taking steps to craft it. And the thing that I talked about earlier with the person that I'm working with, detach your identity from work. Many
Mm.
people stay unhappy because they over identify with their jobs. So,
Mm.
Stanford psychologist Carol Dweck's research was done on mindset that shows that we believe that we are tied to this specific role, and that is when we feel trapped. So instead of, defining yourself by your job, focus on the skills, focus on the growth, focus on the values that you've had. And
Mm.
understand that even if your job title per se is taken away or moves away or you move away, the skills, the experience, the growth is an integral part of you. It is going to come with you into whatever that you choose to do next.
Totally. Yeah.
Yeah. And the final thing is, and I think I briefly touched upon that, is to build an exit strategy. Even if you do not plan to leave, most of us don't even have our resumes kind of updated,
Mm.
right?
True.
So feeling stuck is often a symptom of lack of options. So,
Mm.
start creating what we call as career insurance. Develop
Mm-hmm.
new skills, network, explore side projects, just known as side hustle nowadays. Explore that. Even
Mm.
Harvard Business Review suggests that, employees who feel they have a backup plan, they experience greater psychological freedom and also higher job satisfaction, even if they don't leave, because
Yeah.
they're not stepping in from a victim mentality at all.
Right. They're not feeling trapped any longer.
Yeah. So the question that you asked about, what is it that we can do? Can we do something about it? Can we change our experience? So your work experience is an inside out process. Yeah. The goal isn't always to change a job, but
Mm.
it's to change the way you show up in your current job,
True.
by bringing your intention, your agency to your daily work life. And how can you bridge the gap between what you envision yourself to do and what you're really doing right now without chasing the next opportunity
Mm.
constantly? And I think that really is what it is in the
Yeah, that makes
briefest way.
a lot of sense, I think, because I mean, I always say this that our biggest struggle comes from the fact that we are always trying to drag things from our area of influence to our area of control instead of leaving them where they are, like, focusing on, and it's a simple formula, right? Area of control equals effort, and area of influence equals acceptance,
Yeah.
right? So whatever you can influence but can't control, you just accept, and accept does not always mean surrender or submission.
Mhm.
It's just that seeing reality for what it is.
Yeah, it gives you the headspace to kind of really focus on what's in your control and take action rather than
Exactly.
fretting over something which is anyways not going to happen, or in the sense that it cannot happen in the way that you control it.
Yeah, because the variables probably are not in your hands, or right now you don't have control over them. Maybe that will change with time. But to create the space to wait for that time requires this very clear segregation of what I can control and what I cannot. So I think what you said absolutely makes perfect sense. I think, and for me also, like, there were a lot of very interesting aspects, like the whole job crafting thing. Like I think a lot of people think about it, but you don't really have the structure for it.
Yeah.
So I think it's going to help a lot of people to hear it like this, the pointers that you laid out. And I think that's a great note for us to wrap up today's episode.
Yes. So I
Um,
think as we wrap up, I would want let's leave our listeners with this reflection.
okay.
What's that one small shift you can make in your current job today that'll bring you closer to the job that you truly want without really shifting the job? One little change that you can bring in today that takes you closer to the job that you really want. Think about it and start implementing it. It doesn't have to be very big. Just a little small step makes a world of a
Yeah,
difference.
and nothing is too small, honestly,
Yeah.
like positive effects always work in a cumulative fashion.
Yeah.
So you start doing something small today, which looks minuscule, but you do it every day for 1 month, you will see the difference, no matter what you're doing, no matter how, even if it's something as small as, like, okay, I'm going to go into work from tomorrow and just going to have 2 glasses of water before I start working.
Yeah.
So, I think that's a great question that you've asked, and you're leaving our listeners with, Chika. So if you guys try something, and if you, as you're listening to it, if something comes to mind that this is a small shift I can make in my job profile from starting today, do tell us about it also. We want to hear
Yes.
it. I'm sure other readers and listeners want to hear it. So, like I always say, that if you leave a comment on something that you have tried and it's worked for you, you really don't know who you might help out. So, leave us that feedback, leave us your comments, leave us your thoughts, and we would love to hear from you.
Absolutely. And we will see you soon. And with that, we wrap up today's episode. And do not forget to hit the bell icon because Prachi is going to talk all about relationships and why do we
Absolutely.
stay stuck in the ones that maybe do not nourish us. So, all of those coming up very soon. Take care, everybody. Thank you for listening always.
Thank you. Bye
Bye.
bye.